Hello YouTube, Esnix here, and I have for you a video. I haven't done one like this in a long time, so I got out the old camcorder, and with enough light I hope we can take a look at this old computer. I'm looking at a gateway. This is a Pentium II based system. It is model G6-350. It's, I believe, the Gateway Essential PC. I have the cover off, and we're going to flip it around and look at the back side in a moment. But you can see it has a DVD-ROM player, a floppy drive, and that's it on the front. It has one spare 5¼ inch bay, and it's beige, as almost all computers were back in 1998. So, I think IBM was the only manufacturer to release a black tower, the Aptiva. So let's flip this around. We'll take a look at the inside in a moment. So let's take a look at the back side here. See if I got a good, yeah, I got a good view. Okay. Let's take a look up at the model there. Get a good shot. Sorry, I have to lift the tripod up there, but hopefully you can get a good view of that. And on the back side we have our collection of ports. We have a PS2 mouse and keyboard, 2 USB ports, I believe probably 1.1. We have a parallel port, a serial port, built-in VGA, built-in sound, and all the way at the bottom we have a internet card, network card, sorry. So it is a 3-com EtherLink III ISA network card. So there's power supply, and it is a 90-watt unit, so big power for this system here. So let's take a look at the inside of the case, the inside of the computer. Sorry about that. So let's zoom out a little bit, and from top to bottom, if you can see, tucked away all the way at the top of the case is the hard drive. It's mounted upside down, screwed into the top of the frame. It's a 4 GB Quatum drive. It is an IDE drive, and you can see it's connected there with a old ribbon style cable. Right below it is the DVD-ROM drive, and tucked in right below the DVD-ROM drive, let's see if we can get a better look here, there you go, is the floppy drive. Now we got some sloppy cable work here, but they're all tied up, so it's not too bad. Up there in that corner of the motherboard, you can see it shining, is the clock battery, the CMOS battery. I just put a new CMOS battery in there. It's a little difficult to reach with my fat fingers, but I was able to do it. So the power supply is right in front of you, and as I said, it's a little 90-watt unit. Behind the power supply you can see the fins on the heatsink on the Pentium II CPU there. It's running at 350 megahertz on a 100 megahertz bus system board. There are 2 RAM slots, and they're both populated with, I believe, 128 megabyte RAM, so for a total of 256. And then let's go a little lower here. We have 4 PCI slots and one ISA slot. And the one ISA slot has the 3COM EtherLink III card. Let's get in there a little closer. There, you can see that. So, here is our system. The motherboard, I believe, is based on the Intel 440LX chipset, or it could be the 440BX chipset. So this computer would have come standard with either Windows 98, most likely Windows 98, or it could be ordered with NT4. But for today, we're going to install an oldie but a goodie here. We're going to install an old version of Linux. Now, I've done this installation before on different hardware, but I decided to redo an installation of, wait for it, let me grab the box, or let me pan over here. Oh, there we go. OpenLinux, yes, OpenLinux version 1.3, released in 1998. You can see next to it there's another well-known Linux, RedHat 5.2, also from 1998. So we're going to see how this system fares with an old version of Linux. The reason I pick Caldera's OpenLinux is because I do want to do another video highlighting the Looking Glass desktop that was really only available for a brief time and available on Caldera's OpenLinux 1.3. The Looking Glass desktop was pretty short-lived. It was installed, at least in this distribution, on top of the FVWM window manager, and provided one of the first really usable graphical desktop environments. So KDE 1.0 was available back then, as well as GNOME. I think version 1 point something was available then as well. But Looking Glass was a little different and very fast, very light on its resource use. So let's pan back up to the computer. Okay, and we will flip this thing around and plug it in. Oh, did not mean for it to turn on right away. Okay, let's grab our keyboard and mouse cables here, both PS2, of course, because that is what is necessary. There we go. And if you bear with me, I will grab I just had to go grab an Ethernet cable just in case Caldera OpenLinux decides to recognize the 3M card. There's no hope of getting a wireless internet, a wireless network card working on such an old system here. but we will try to get a wired network connection on installation. So let's move our camera around, focus on the screen here. There we go. What I will do is power on the system, and let's go immediately. Monitor's not on. Let's go immediately into the BIOS. We can take a look around here for a moment. Excuse me. Okay. I believe that's about as good a view as we're going to get out of the BIOS, this camera. Okay, so we have our main screen here. You can see it's an Intel Pentium II running at 300 megahertz. Front side bus is 100 megahertz. Total memory is 256 megs of RAM. And the system date, you know, I never reset the system date here. So let's do this. 12. What's the day today? 06 2017. The time I'm not going to worry about. Let's go over to advanced peripheral configuration. So you can see our serial and parallel ports are enabled. Both IDE controllers are enabled. Integrated audio is enabled. The integrated audio is provided by a Ensoniq 1373 chipset, which would be the SoundBlaster 128 card. The onboard video is provided by a Riva TNT 128 chip. AGP video on the motherboard. There's no AGP slot available, but the built-in video is running on the AGP bus. Plug and play configuration, not going to change any of those. IDE drive configuration, we have our Quatum Fireball. As I said, it's a 4 gigabyte drive, and we have our Machida DVD-ROM, which is Panasonic DVD-ROM, I believe, in the US. Diskette configuration is enabled, proper size, and write protect is off. Okay. Event log. Yep. There it is. Configuration error, system not options not set. It's because I replaced the battery. And video configuration. Palette snooping is off. Sets the aperture size. Now, I believe 8 megabytes of video RAM is installed, so it must use system RAM for the rest. And that's it for advanced. There's no password set up. Power management. Hard drive enabled. Okay. Suspend. PS fan always on. That's fine. No, we don't want to exit just yet. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, quick boot mode is enabled. Silent boot mode is enabled. Let's disable that so we can see it, what it says. And let's disable that. Scan user flash area. After power failure. Okay. On modem ring, stay off. On LAN, let's stay off. First boot device is our CD-ROM. Second boot device is our floppy drive. Third boot device is the hard drive. And now we can save and exit. Now, we have our CD-ROM here for, there we go, got to get it on the screen, for Caldera's OpenLinux 1.3. So let's take it out of the sleeve and put it in the drive. Now we can exit and save our changes. You can see it's counting up the memory. Now while this is going, let's see, what should I do? Take a look at the OpenLinux box, because I have the full retail package here. So, as you can see, we have our box set of Caldera's OpenLinux. And let's see if we can get a nice view of the back with all the information. There you go. Pretty cool. And let's turn back to our computer. You know what? I'm going to reboot it for us because we missed the boot up process here. So let's just hit escape to abort. I like how abort just goes back and forth between this step and the language selection. So let's do a Control-Alt-Delete. Let's get back into the BIOS because I want to disable the I want to enable the quick boot, and so we don't have to wait too long. There we go. Okay, so we're booting back up. And we'll get a chance to see the initial boot screen. There we go, Caldera Linux. And if we wait long enough, it will just start to boot. So this was August 1998. It automatically will boot up the default kernel here. We could have passed it parameters if we needed to or knew what to do. So let's proceed in English and US keyboard map. And do we want to use a previously saved configuration? I'll explain this later in the installation. Okay, so let's say no here. And we're going to use this setup. So it detected our hard drive and our CD-ROM. Very cool. and all drives have been detected. Now we're going to have to format a partition and our hard drive. So you may now change, yes. Do you want to create Linux partitions? Yes, we do. And we're going to want to pick our hard drive. And it's warning us, changing the partition table affects the data. Only use fdisk when you're familiar with its use and the way it works. Well, we have to become familiar with the way it works, so let's go to it. So, fdisk, is a command line program. First thing I want to do is P for print out the partition table, the current partition table, and there is one native Linux partition on the drive. I bought this used, so I don't know if I don't know what's on here. So what we're going to do is delete this partition and start from scratch. So M is for help, and we are going to delete a partition, so that's D, partition 1, and now when we print our partition table, there are no partitions. N is to create a new partition. We'll call it a primary, we'll create a primary. Partition 1. First cylinder is the first cylinder. And now we're going to tell it how much we want. A 127 megabyte partition. This will become swap. We're going to have to tell it we want it to be a swap partition, so we need T for type. We're talking about partition number 1. And now L to list the codes of the partition types. So since we want swap, the code is 82 for Linux swap. Okay. We need to create another partition. It will also be primary, and this is now partition number 2. The first cylinder will be 18, and the last cylinder will be the last cylinder of the drive. Now let's print the partition table and make sure we got what we thought we did. Cool. So we have HDA1 Linux swap, and we have HDA2, which will be our root partition. Now we have to write our changes to the disk. So let's do M for help. In order to write the changes, it's a W to write the changes. Okay. So now it's warning us, partition table has been modified. You must restart your computer. Okay. No further changes are necessary because the partition table has, okay. Should the system reboot? Yes. So now the system will reboot. I'm so glad I enabled quick boot. We didn't want to wait here 2 minutes each time the computer rebooted. We can just hit enter and force it to reboot and force it to boot up instead of waiting for it to time out. Let's see if I can get this monitor, the screen, there we go, adjusted so we can see that left border, screen border correctly. So we're going to proceed in English, US keyboard map. No, we don't want to use a previously saved configuration. And we're going to use this setup. It did, again, correctly detect our disk drives. And all disks have been correctly recognized. We don't need to make any more changes to the partition table. Okay, now we're going to select the partition to be used as swap space. So we're selecting the one and only partition we just created for swap. It's initializing that swap space. So far, the installation program is, walks you through everything. If I didn't know what to do, it did come with a, 200-page getting started guide. So we're installing from the CD-ROM. It is HDC. And it detected our CD-ROM disk. So now we're selecting our root partition, and it looks like it's detected the correct one, which is the only one. And now we will format it. You notice there are no options for file systems. It just uses the ext2 file system, which was current at the time. No, we don't want to check for defective sectors because that takes forever. Now we can see it's writing the inode tables. All the numbers on the screen are I believe the sectors in which it is writing or putting specific file system data. So now it's writing the superblocks and file system accounting information. So we are going to go with all packages. Okay. We're warned it might take a little while. And we can see it's beginning to copy the packages. Now, Caldera, with their OpenLinux product, you can see it's using RPM packages. So it does rely on RPM for its package management. Now, Caldera Linux, when they released their 1.0 release, based their distribution on RedHat. It was a RedHat clone, I guess. Well, not clone so much as they used RedHat for their Linux base. But by 1.3, what Caldera had done is they bought out a small German company, or they bought the rights to use a distribution from a small German company or group, and the distribution was known as the Linux Support Team distribution. So it was the LST distribution. LST was developed by a group of German programmers who based their LST distribution off of Slackware. However, they chose to use the RPM package format for their distribution, but it was really a modified version of Slackware at the time. And it was a very easy to use for the time Slackware distribution geared towards the German market. So Caldera either bought out the company or bought out the rights to use the LST distribution, and that is what has become Caldera's OpenLinux. Now, their original product, based off of RedHat, was, I believe, called Network Linux or Caldera Network Desktop. That was it, Network Desktop. But I guess they figured they wanted to have their own identity and not be beholden to RedHat for updates and modifications by selecting to use their own base or purchase their own base with LST. They were in total control of their distribution. So, and they didn't have to rely on another group or company to provide their Linux operating system. And they could develop OpenLinux on their own path without any connection to RedHat. So we can see it's humming along here. Communicator Export Edition. That was Netscape Communicator, that package. And this is going to take a little while, so what I'll probably do is stop the video and we'll come back at the next phase of the installation. But you can see this, it wasn't fast, but for its day it certainly wasn't slow either. CD-ROM drives over the IDE bus were about as fast as you could get for 1998. So, as I said, we'll take a little pause here instead of filming the entire copying process, file copying process, and we'll come back. Okay, we're back and we're done with our file copying. What it's doing now is it's doing some post-installation, I guess, post-install of packages. So it's setting up packages here. Man pages take a little while, but overall, once we're done with the file copying, which took about 10 minutes, so it wasn't too bad. So it might have been 15 minutes. I didn't really time it. So hopefully it's not getting stuck, it's just taking a while to copy. There we go. Or taking a while to unpack and set up. So we can see we're almost there. Some of the larger packages take a little more time. There we go. So, complete host name of your computer. Let's just go with this, that's fine. Let's say we have a network card and see if it detects it. Okay, please use the module manager. So we'll have to do that after post installation. So let's say no for now. We'll set up local time. We do have a PS2 mouse. We don't have a printer. And now we'll set up our password for the root user. Okay. Now we'll set up our regular user. We'll stick with our bash shell. And now we'll set our password for our regular user. Okay, so the boot analysis for the Lilo or Lilo setup. We're going to install Lilo on the first IDE hard disk in the MBR. But you can see the options we have. We can set it to another partition, to the root partition, don't install Lilo at all. And we're going to tell it to boot the kernel. We'll just call it Linux. I don't think we have to pass any parameters, and no further entries to add. So here is the Lilo configuration we are going with. Okay, installed successfully. Here we can choose our services to start up. I don't know to change anything, so we'll just go with the remote. The defaults, I think. Let's do that just in case we need DHCP. No, we don't need a DHCP server, so let's not do that. Okay. Okay, we're going to choose let's go with this because that is closest to what we're going to have. Let's see if this will detect the Riva chipset. So let's say yes. Okay. Now here we're asked if we want to save the current configuration to diskette. Now here is where we can save our setup, and at the beginning of the installation it asked if we wanted to use a previously saved configuration. So if you're installing this on multiple identical machines, it might be a good idea to do this. We are not, however. Okay, a system is installed. So let's boot into our new system. Let's try to enter graphics mode here and see if we can set up our X configuration. So we have our PS2 mouse, and that's what we're going to stick with. We have our keyboard set up, and now we can look for our video card. So let's go down to the R's and see if Riva 128, that is our card. Okay. Hopefully this will work. Let's go to our monitor setup, and we're going to pick multi-frequency. Let's go to our mode selection. And tick off the modes we want, and our color depth, and let's try done and see what we get. Now hopefully we will get a working X server. Looks good. So let's save our configuration. And now we can log in. So we'll type in our username and our password, and we can start X with the command start X, or KDE if we want to go to KDE. So let's start X. Oh, look at that. We're going to get a cool desktop here. Auto adjust that so it fits the screen size properly. Working mouse. And we're getting a bit of screen jitter here. Not sure what else to call it. I don't know if that's coming through on the camera, but might be some sort of slight timing issue with the video signal. But here is our Looking Glass desktop. I wonder if a different monitor, an older monitor, might help. But so far this is looking decent. Okay. So in a future video we'll go over the Looking Glass desktop, but we have it up and running. So I hope you enjoyed this experiment here with OpenLinux 1.3, on the installation of which on the gateway. Let's see, there it is. G6-350 Pentium II machine. So there you have it. And we will be back with a tour of the Looking Glass desktop here. You know what? Let's see if yeah, this video is not the best. Yeah. If we right click, left click on the desktop and hold the mouse, we get our menu. And the way to get out of this would be to quit the desktop, log out, and log in as root, and shut down now. And we should be able to kill the machine. So there you have it. As I said, we'll be back soon with a tour of the Looking Glass desktop. Bye-bye.